This is Marc, Katz, dating coach for smart, strong, successful women and your personal trainer for love. Welcome back to the Love You podcast, where you're going to learn everything you need to know about dating, relationships, men, and sex from a man's point of view. And today we are going to dive in with a controversial idea. If you're a woman with money, you don't need a man with money. There, I said it. Now, I know that's extremely challenging, but I've put a lot of thought into this, so bear with me. I hope you watch both halves of every podcast I have, but this is one where you definitely want to tune into the second half of this as well as the first half. The first half, I'm going to give you 3 stories that help form my worldview on this. They're all entertaining and informative in their own way. In the second half, I'm going to explain how you could radically increase your odds of happiness by learning to date like a man. But this, the overarching topic is men and money, what they think about money and money in relation to you, who spends, who makes more, the whole thing. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty right this second. First story. Right? If I was doing vignettes and I was making a movie, here's the first story. I'm a 30-year-old customer service representative at JDate. I'm making $32,000 a year while I'm putting myself through film school. I go out on a date with a psychologist. She's attractive. She's on JDate. She's Jewish. She's bright. We have a really good connection. I am doing the best I can, of course, to be chivalrous, but I'm a man of limited means, and I've always said there's a big difference between a man being cheap and a man being poor. At the time, I was relatively poor. I've never been cheap. But take her out on 3, 4 dates. I think third date, she spent the night, woke up the next day. We went for bagels or something like that, and she's like, how much you buy us a dozen bagels and cream cheese and orange juice and lox? And I was like, okay, because again, that's what a guy of means would certainly do. It's no problem, right? The problem is that I wasn't a guy of means, but I did everything that was necessary. On the first 4 dates, I paid for everything, and then she said something appreciative. She said, I got the next one, which was music to my ears as a guy who had no money, who was putting himself out over the course of these couple weeks. It was really nice to hear that she appreciated me and she was going to get the next one. And so I'm at work and she calls me and says, I just read LA Weekly and I found that there's a play. I remember the play. I think it's called It's Just Sex. It stuck with me. She goes, so there's this play and it's at this small theater. Could you call up and get tickets? All right, so this was the meal she was supposed to get. And you hate to keep score, but she said she was going to take me out. And then she calls me at work and she says, could you get tickets to this? Well, I'm not going to be like, no, you call and get tickets. Now, I have no idea why she called me to tell me that I should get tickets, but okay. So I call up, I procure tickets for the event, and I figure, all right, she's going to get dinner beforehand, like she said. So we go to dinner. It's an inexpensive dinner. It's Chinese food, $40, something like that. End of the meal, she throws her credit card down, goes to the bathroom. When she comes back, she sees that I didn't throw my credit card down and that, in fact, she got the entire $40 check. And she looks me square in the eyes and she says, and I'm not kidding, what am I, your sugar mama? What am I, your sugar mama? Because I let her pick up a $40 dinner after I picked up the first 5 dates. That was the last date we went on. And she was surprised. Right? When I told her my feelings about this, she was really surprised. And to this day, she disputes the facts of that story. So that's one formative experience from when I had no money, dated someone who had greater means, and felt severely taken advantage of. The next story, a few years later, it's the first year of my business. I'm running eCyrano, online dating profile writing, E-Cyrano, for anybody who's interested. And I'm sort of a one-man show. My book just came out. This is 2004. My book just came out, and this is the first year I'm on my own, and I'm actually making a living. I'm not doing odd jobs for other people for 30 grand a year. I'm actually making a living, and to be explicit, this was a year in which I made $60,000, my first year in business. And writing people's online dating profiles like crazy, and I happened to get a girlfriend who was a woman. Right, this is not, I was 32, she was 38. She'd worked for 17 years straight out of college at the same company. She was like a senior vice president or something like that. I don't know what she made, but I'm guessing it was $200,000. She owned her own condo. And I was gaga about her. She was wonderful. I was definitely in love with her. But I remember in our fast starting relationship, I remember it was the summertime, and she wanted to go on like a 5-star trip to Cabo to celebrate her birthday or something like that. Now, I'd never traveled anywhere from 21 to 30, whatever I was, 32. I'd never gone anywhere because I never had any money. I'm not the kind of person to ever go into debt. I'm not the guy who's going to put $5,000 on a credit card and go to Europe. So I pretty much hadn't been anywhere, much less on a 5-star trip anywhere. So it became a negotiation where I have a girlfriend who makes $200,000, and me, who's in the first year of his business, making, and I didn't know what I was going to make that year. This is the middle of the year. The first year I was in business, I ended up making $60,000. And we're trying to negotiate the kind of trip that we're going to go on and what amount I'm supposed to pay. And it became sort of a microcosm of what our entire relationship looked like, because I know I'm the man, I know what the man's role is supposed to be, and yet our means are so different. She's making 3 to 4 times more than I am, and she's expecting me to go halvesies on everything, or at least alternate checks. And I understand the idea of chivalry and a woman wanting to be taken care of and doing the best I can, but I'm sort of bankrupting myself trying to keep up with her. Right, because she was an older, successful woman with expensive tastes. Right? So again, I'm not trying to throw her under the bus, but I remember being in that position where there's such a disparity in income, and I'm trying to be the man and trying to keep up, and realizing that it's hard for me to keep up because she's expecting me to pay half of everything when I only make 1/4 of everything. Next story. This is years later. I'm with my wife for 9 months. She's not my wife, she's my girlfriend at this point in time. I'm doing better in my career, I'm more established. This is now 2008, I think. And my wife, 2007, my wife confesses to me that she's $40,000 in debt. Part of it had to do with her divorce. Didn't get any alimony payments from her husband, who had lost his job. Part of it was she was bailing out a friend of hers. Her best friend was going to be evicted from her home. She had 2 kids. My wife took out $15,000 on her credit cards to support her best friend. So, not that there are good reasons to be in debt, but there were valid reasons that my wife was in severe debt. But I was upset, and she knew that I'm very responsible. I'm the guy who gets the bill, pays the bill that day. And I remember her telling me, and I was so angry, I was so upset, like she pulled the wool over my eyes, like $40,000 in debt, how are we gonna merge lives, how am I gonna buy a house, you're gonna destroy our credit, blah, 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 blah. And I remember, once I got over that, and I realized why she didn't tell me at the beginning, because I would have judged her for being fiscally irresponsible. I'll admit it, and she knew that. So she hid it from me for 9 months, but at that point I loved her, and I was thinking about a future, and I said, all right, so how are we going to solve this one? And so we came up with a compromise, and the roles were reversed from this in my previous girlfriend. This time I was making 6 figures, and my wife was making $55,000 at her career, where she'd been at the same company for 16 years, but it wasn't a lucrative career. It was a cool career, but it wasn't a lucrative career. She didn't have company health insurance. She didn't aggressively ask for raises. She didn't bring in new business, and so she got tiny incremental raises and great perks. She did a lot of international travel, but as a result, she's $40,000 in debt. And I'm thinking about marriage, and I'm thinking, what are we going to do about this? I'm not, I'm doing okay, but I'm not going to pay down her debt. So I did the best that I thought I could do, and I said, so here's going to be our compromise. I know I make more than you do. I don't want to take on your debt. I don't think that's fair of me. But what I will do is I will pay for everything from here on in. Right? Every lunch, every dinner, every movie, every meal, all travel. I got it. So that way you can save your money and you could pay down your own debt. That was our compromise. Right? And this is how I acted in a different situation. Same guy, just has greater means, and so I absorbed all of our mutual expenses. When we got married, I pretty much paid for the wedding. Got a little help from my parents and her parents, but I pretty much paid for the wedding. And 3 years later, when we finally got my wife back to even, her credit was good, and that's when we were able to buy a house. And now she is a stay-at-home mom who is on eternity leave. It started out as maternity leave, now it is eternity leave. So those are some stories that helped me form my worldview about men, money, dating and relationships, generosity, equality, fairness, etc. I think it's really important to understand that not all men have read your playbook. They don't always know the right thing to do. There's no one set of rules. I could talk to 5 dating coaches and they'll tell you 5 different things about the appropriate thing to do. I try to give you the point of view from a man's perspective, what most of us are thinking. I can't speak for every man in every situation. I think it's always important in dating and relationships to try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So in the second half of this podcast, I'm going to explain how to increase your odds of happiness by letting go of your financial requirements. Not all financial requirements. I'm not asking you to support a slacker who's playing guitar for quarters on the subway, but letting go of that one that says the man has to make more than you is going to open up your entire world, really change the way you date, and get you happy, which is really what I'm here for as your dating coach. So I'm Marc Katz. This is the Love You Podcast, and we will be right back with the second half of Men and Money. Hey, this is Marc Katz, dating coach for smart, strong, successful women, and your personal trainer for love. Welcome back to the Love You Podcast, where we're going to learn everything there is to know about dating, relationships, sex, and men from a man's point of view. And today, we are talking about men and money, particularly the idea that a man has to earn more than a woman to be a viable relationship candidate. First half of this podcast, I talked about myself, some stories that should give you a sense of perspective on at least why I feel the way I feel. It's worth taking a watch. But I want to acknowledge that I'm in a fortunate position. My wife and I. My wife is one of. I did research on this before I got here. So, my wife is one of 29% of women who are stay-at-home moms, but she's part of a much smaller percentage of women that are called opt-out mothers. Right? They are women who have the choice not to work. Right? Sometimes it's, guy makes $32,000 a year. His wife has no education and she has to stay home taking care of the toddlers, and that's why she's a stay-at-home mom. They need a second income, but someone has to take care of the kids, and that's her job. An opt-out mother is women who have master's degrees and stay home, and they can do so because they have a median family income of $132,000. So $132,000 is the average family income for opt-out mothers, and that only applies to 5% of the population. So here's the deal. All right, bring it back to what I led off with about the financial requirement that a man make more money than you do. If a man makes $250,000, right, think about that for a second. And again, I hate to be gauche and talk about actual hard numbers, but we're using it as a marker, and I know many places in the country there aren't many men who make $250,000. I tend to work with people in big cities, so it's not an impossible number. But if a man makes $250,000, right, we use the example of me and my wife, or the role reversal, where my ex-girlfriend made $250,000 and I made $50,000. So if a man makes $250,000, it really doesn't matter what his wife makes. If he makes $250,000 and she makes $50,000, and he lets her pick up a check, he's a cheap bastard. Right? I've been informed by women that if a guy makes $250,000 and a woman makes $50,000 and he lets her do anything, he's a cheap bastard. Okay, I'm not arguing with that. I'm just pointing out that's the word I've received from women that I've coached for many years in the past. Woman makes $250,000. What are the rules now? Right? If we're in a gender-blind society, well, technically she should be a cheap bastard if she was with a guy who made 50 and let him pick up anything. But of course, that's not the way it works. The way it works is that she expects him to make $251,000 at the very least, or pick up at least half of everything. That's old school. That's chivalry. I get it, and I'm not single-handedly going to change societal or gender norms. All I'm going to point out is that this is just about the one double standard that really works in favor of women. Most double standards are really antithetical to women's rights. He's a stud, she's a slut is a perfect example of double standards that weigh against women. And this is the only one that works for women. We are 100% equal work, equal pay, equal rights. You should pick up everything. You should pick up the check for everything. You should make more money than we do. You should pick up at least half, even if you don't make half. So it's not based on current reality. It's based on a code that was created years and years ago when women didn't work. Men had to pick up everything. Right? There was no option. So that became chivalry. Men pick up everything. Right? Well, now in a post-feminist society where women are more college educated than men, have more master's degrees than men, there's definitely still a gender pay gap, but it's shrinking. And so we need to create a society based on, a system based on current reality, right? Because again, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I want to be equal, but I'm a damsel in distress and I hope a guy picks up everything for me. You can say that, but we're in a different world now. So I understand the pushback. I've been around the block. And I've always heard, I don't have a problem with men making less than I do. It's that men are insecure around me. And to be fair, there are men who are insecure around women who make more. They're bought into the old double standard too, that he has to be the protector and the provider, and he has to make more or he's less of a man. There's a lot of people who do buy into that, and they're uncomfortable. And there's statistics that show that, in many marriages, they suffer when the woman makes more. But I think that's a surface reading. That's a piece of the puzzle. It's not your job to convince a perpetually insecure man that he's man enough for you if he is threatened by the fact that you make more money. Right? If he doesn't think he's good enough for you, he's not good enough for you. It's as simple as that. The place I'm coming from is I've been the guy, right? I've been the guy who made 50 with the girlfriend to make 250. I wasn't remotely threatened. I didn't think I was less of a man at all. I knew what I was made of, and I was very proud of what I was doing and the path that I was on. So the issue in that case wasn't my own insecurity. It actually worked the other way around. The issue then became, and you have to look in the mirror and ask yourself this, is it that he's insecure, or is it that you can't help but to look down on a man who makes less than you do? Because the truth is, he could pick up on that. And you might not want to think that, but if your deep-seated belief is that he's not really a man unless he can provide for me or make more than I do, right? He's not a man because he's steadfast and kind and a good listener and honest and loyal and good to me. He's not a man for those reasons. He's only a man if he makes more than I do. Well, if you believe that, he picks up on that, and whether you like it or not, you're the one who's the cause of his insecurity, right? Men just want to know that they can command your respect in spite of the fact that they make less. And it's really hard if you don't really respect him. And again, it's not a matter of issuing blame. We're just sort of observing the situation. Look in your heart and ask, are you one of those people who actually looks down on men who are either less ambitious or make less money? Because I can tell you, when I look down on my wife, not in the least. Now you might say, well, it's different. Well, which way do you want it? Are men and women equal? Or do you think that because a man's a man, he should earn more? He should be more ambitious, right? He should be in that power structure, right? It's contradictory and it's a little bit messy. Well, the fact is, 29% of women out-earn their husbands. More statistics. I actually do research for these. Right? So yes, men do need to get over the ego of it, but women need to get over it as well. Right? There is a double standard, and that's the thing I really wanted to call out today. I talked about how I wasn't cheap in the first half of this. I wasn't cheap, I was poor. Given the means, I do anything, and I'm pleased to do anything. But I do see that there's definitely a different point of view. I think it's based on culture in how men and women see money and giving. Perfect example. If I'm making good money, my wife doesn't make as much money as I do. I want to take her on a trip to Tahiti. I know that if I don't want to go to Tahiti by myself, I have to buy a ticket for her. Right? I don't spend any time thinking about it. If anywhere that I go with my wife, I make more money. She's a stay-at-home mom now, but even if she wasn't, before she was a stay-at-home mom, I would have to buy the ticket. I would have to pay for the hotel. I would have to buy the food. And that's the cost of doing business. That's what I would do if I wanted to go on a vacation. I find women, my smart, strong, successful clients, have a really, really hard time wrapping themselves around that. Right? If the roles were reversed, they'll complain to me. Wait, I have to pay for his flight? What a drain. What a mooch. What a leech. I don't know if you've ever thought that, but I've had some lovely women that I've worked with who couldn't get themselves around this double standard. Right? That if a man who makes good money pays for his wife, it's well within the realm of normal. If a woman pays for a guy, right, there's something wrong with the guy and he's taking from her. I swear to God, I don't see my wife as a leech or a mooch. And I wouldn't think that most reasonable men do either. She's got her realm, and right now it's domestic, but if she's in a job where she works for someone else, there's a cap on her salary. That's fine. That's the way it goes. I'm not telling you right now to date someone who's penniless. Sometimes I hear this and people take these really extreme arguments, right? I'm not saying you should date some slacker and, who gambles away your money, right? Drains your money from your bank account so he buys himself a fancy car with your money. That's not the way it works. It's not the way it works in my household either. What I am telling you is that if you make $150,000, for example, which puts you in the, 5% or something of the country. If you make $150 and you love your work, there's nothing wrong with dating a guy who makes $60,000. Right? If you make $150, he makes $60. Now combined, you're making $210,000. And if you're splitting things fairly, you're paying for 2/3 of everything. Right? But again, that's 1/3 less than you were paying before. You just got essentially you think of him, instead of thinking of him, oh, he makes less money, he's a drain on my finances, just think we combined our incomes, right? He puts in proportionally what he makes, right? And you end up paying less. It's found money, right? Not a drain on your money, which is the way so many women end up seeing it when a guy makes less. So in the current formation, if you make $100,000, 5% of men make more. If you make over $200,000, 2% of men make more. If you date my way, where we say he doesn't need to make more, it opens up your entire dating pool immensely. Right? You still get to keep your job. You get to share your life with someone. And by the way, this is how men date. Right? When men go out there, they're not really looking, most men anyway, and I'm sure there's exceptions, they're not looking for a sugar mama. They're not looking for someone to support them. We don't think of things like that. If we're online, like, is she pretty? Oh, okay, let me read about her. She sounds cool. I'm going to write to her. Right? We don't scroll down to education, job, and income. It's incidental, right? And so I don't want to, I'm not going to get into a biological argument about this. Someone might turn it into biology. I really like to think of this as something that's gender blind. When a man dates, if he doesn't care about money, it opens up 100% of the world. He could date a woman who makes more than him. He could make a woman who dates less than him. It's one factor that's just not on the table. So that's the beautiful thing about having your own money, is that money ceases to be a thing that someone needs to bring to you. If you're a career woman, you have that. So you could date for love and laughter and attraction and kindness and generosity, companionship, right? Because you have your own money. When you stop seeing men who make less as a drain on you. So we need to make that really important distinction between a guy who's, wantonly spending your money, who's completely irresponsible, who would otherwise be living on a couch, and a guy who chose a job as a high school English teacher or a mid-level, IT guy at a big company who makes $70,000 and is content with his work and does just fine, and his bills are paid and he's got a little bit extra. Right? There's no reason that that guy's not a suitable candidate any more than if a guy made a lot of money and chose someone that way. So I go back to that statistic from the first half of the podcast. If 5% of women are opt-out mothers and they stay home because they have a median family income of $132,000, that means if a man could make $132,000 and have a stay-at-home wife who brings no money, doesn't it stand to reason that if you make $132,000, right, and you have a guy who makes $70,000, right? Because a guy who has 132 can support a family, right? A wife and a kid or two on 132. Don't you think you can make 132? A guy comes in and brings 70. Now combined, you're making $200,000. Don't you think that's a very realistic way of dating and having a really nice life? As long as you tweak your expectations about how it's supposed to be. You don't need a man who subsidizes your life if you're a career woman. You're doing fine on your own. That's beautiful. That's empowerment. It opens up the entire world. All right? So my advice, just 4 quick bullet points of advice for career women who make more money than many men. Number 1, be humble about being able to afford nice things. Ascribe your financial success to a choice, not a character issue. Right? It's important the same way that you want a man to make you feel beautiful, right? Not to make you feel unattractive compared to younger, thinner, prettier women. Right? If this thing is real about men being insecure, you want to make him feel secure. So the fact that you chose a job that has higher upside because you're a lawyer, where he chose a job that has a ceiling to his income, is just a choice he made. It's not about him being a loser or a slacker or anything like that. Right? You made a choice with your career. He made a different choice with his career, and that's okay. Number 2, if you can embrace him for all his other great qualities, he will feel safe and secure with him. He will feel safe and secure with you. Right? You could, in other words, bring out a better boyfriend. You'll bring out a better man if you make him feel like a man, in spite of the fact that he does not bring home the bacon the way you bring home the bacon. It doesn't actually make him less of a man unless you make it that way. So if you want him to feel masculine, don't emasculate him by making him feel bad about his lack of means. Right? It has nothing to do with who he is as a human being or a partner or a husband. I'm not saying money doesn't matter. I'm saying that combined, you are a couple, and whatever you bring home together as a couple is your income. One person's contribution, just because it's more financially, doesn't necessarily mean that that person is a better partner. Number 3, enter money discussions as if they are problems to solve as a team instead of attacking or pointing fingers. Men do this, unfortunately, in relationships. I've even been guilty of this. I hate to admit, where you say, I'm the person who makes the money here, therefore my vote counts more than yours. Yes, there's a budget. Yes, you should have a partner who doesn't just spend your money against your will. But you can't play the I make the more money card, because that's very dispiriting to a partner who, in my case, doesn't work at all, or simply just doesn't make as much money. You are equal partners in a team, and when you're making financial decisions together, what are we going to save, what are we going to spend, those should always be team decisions, especially when you're married. They should be team decisions. It's not one person says, I make the money here, therefore I'm going to go buy a boat. That's irresponsible and unfair. The other person should have a vote, even though they don't bring home the same money. And the 4th one, and I actually got this from a therapist friend of mine, share in your financial expenses based on your ability to pay, not on your gender. When my wife and I were first married and I was making 4 times what she was, that was the way we paid our bills. We put our money into, we had separate bank accounts. We put our money into a joint account, and for rent, food, gas, utilities, cable, all that kind of stuff. Whatever our domestic joint was, I would put in 4X and she would put in X that month. Right? Instead of splitting those bills down the middle when I made 4 times more money, that would be really, really unfair to her. Now we could say it's unfair that we're consuming the same amount, we should split it down the middle. Well, that would eat up all of her income if we split it down the middle. So if you're paying proportional to what you make, that is far more fair. It's a smaller chunk. If you're the breadwinner, it's a smaller chunk out of your life than it is out of your partner's life. So don't base this on gender. Make your financial decisions based on ability to pay. I know there's going to be comments on this. There should be comments on this. Some of my most popular blog posts have been about money. So feel free to issue your comments, speak up, I really want to hear what you have to say. I know this could rub people the wrong way, but I think it's an important discussion to have and to put on the table. Thank you for joining me on this Love You podcast. My name is Marc Katz. The next episode I'm going to talk about, oh gosh, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. Maybe how to make your own luck in love. I like that, how to make your own luck in love. If you enjoyed this Love You podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And most importantly, go to www.evanmarckatz, where I am going to give you free dating and relationship advice. All you got to do is give me your name and email address, and I will take care of you forever. Thank you so much for your time. I will see you again next week.